So Donna, you were then, out of treatment from June 2018, and then November 2019 rolls around. So like a year and some months later, you're getting follow-up, right? So is it that the spike happens again, or that the numbers are creeping up? What got you back into treatment?
Fortunately, it's always the blood work. I mean, I am so lucky that a simple blood test can say, oh, it's creeping back up. I really am lucky, because I know not everybody can just rely on a blood test.
And at that point, when are you and Dr. Gasparetto finally working together?
Well, certainly before Darzalex. I had been getting guidance from Little Rock, and they were guiding someone who wasn't a specialist in myeloma, but she was only doing what they had said. And I just decided that they were doing just what everybody else was doing, and there was no reason to rely on Little Rock. That was about the time our mutual friend insisted that I contact Cristina. He kept insisting. And then one night I'm sitting on my couch and it's Cristina. I was a little, like rock star enamored here. And I couldn't believe she called me, which is just amazing. And she's done stuff like that since then. And that's when I switched. So we worked through the whole next path together. Through our mutual discussions and stuff.
So as we go now, we're in November 2019, right? So going back to where Donna is, Donna, this is the third time you're dealing with news that you don't want to hear. First, how did you process it, right, this time around? And then in talking to Dr. Gasparetto, what was your part of the conversation? What was most important to you?
When I found out I was going through this again, I wanted an allo transplant because I had this hope that I would get those 4 years or 5 years like I had after my stem cell transplants in 2012. And we talked about it, and you can't just jump into an allo transplant. It's not covered by Medicare. There's all kinds of issues. It's risky. It might not work. But I kept that in the back of my mind because I wanted that time off, right? That time where I could forget I had cancer. But I started a different program first, and it's been effective. It's Kyprolis, selinexor, and it actually took my M spike to 0 again. It's been 0 for the last 4 months. It's very effective. And I think in my mind, I realized the allo transplant's probably not going to happen, certainly not anytime soon. And it was almost the same time that I think Cristina was at that decision point, and we kind of met in the middle, unknowing we were both getting there. And so by June, I realized this is going to be my life. There is no allo transplant waiting for me. And so I had to reset my expectations.
Before we arrived to that, Donna had another couple of treatments.
Oh, that CAR-T.
Yeah, she forgot. She actually had the CAR-T-cell too, and she went through Darzalex and the combination with the Darzalex and then the CAR-T-cell, and we were putting a lot of money on the CAR-T-cell. And with the allo transplant, and I've done allo transplant, and I believe in immunotherapy, but it's not an easy decision. So let's go back to, will I do that for myself? And I've done in certain situations, but you're always thinking about the risks that you're taking, and the allo is a big, huge decision for several reasons. And we do have some good data, but very limited because, in reality, we have not been very successful with the allo transplant in myeloma. So Donna went through another couple of treatments. Unfortunately, I believe the Darzalex was not so successful for you with the pomalidomide, right, Donna?
It didn't work at all. My numbers continued.
Yeah. So she was failing that, and then we attempted the CAR-T-cell, which was immediately before COVID, right? She was the last. So she was the last patient that we were able to enroll on the clinical trial because shut down everything. And that was okay for a while because Donna loves to live outside, and the CAR T cell gave her the other opportunity of come off the therapy for a little bit, but it didn't last much.
Yeah.
And you never achieve a complete remission with a CAR T cell.
Okay.
Never did.
No.
Okay. No, and I love how Dr. Gasparetto is reminding, actually, there were a couple things, but like you said, Donna, right? It's I don't know, it's on to the next, on to the next. But yeah, it was the Darzalex, Pomalyst, and Dext, right? The first one. Dr. Gasparetto, just in terms of making that decision, I'm just curious what it was, just why start off with that triplet?
Well, she has never been exposed she was never been exposed to Darzalex and isatuximab, the two CD38 antibodies are becoming so important. We're learning that the exposure earlier is becoming, critical, and we're able to achieve deep, durable responses. And the Darzalex is now subcute, so quite convenient. The isatuximab is not yet, but also you go from the weekly to the every 2 weeks administrations. So you're going to the doctor office not very often, and but it gives us the opportunity to still monitor the patient, right? So we don't dislike. With the Darzalex, eventually patients are able to go to the monthly. And so in terms of, going back, quality of life is becoming an important combination. And it made sense. She was treated with the carfilzomib Revlimid. So again, we go to the next generation IMiD, and with we switch class to the Darzalex.
And so, Donna, I guess, Dr. Gasparetto bring up these great points. How important is it to you? I mean, of course, you're weighing different things. You want the myeloma to go away, obviously, but also there's the quality of life. So side effects, how it's given, so infusion, shot, oral, and how often you're having to go in. How do these things weigh for you?
Well, going in isn't the issue. The effects of the chemo are the issue, because you go in one day, okay, so you lose one day of the week where you can't do anything you want. But then, I have nausea and I'm not hungry for the next 2 days. So I really feel like 3 days of my life are spent dealing with cancer. And oddly enough, I can get to the point where for the next 4 days, the next 3 days, I forget I have cancer. So if I could take a pill and be checked every 2 weeks and keep this at bay, I would be ecstatic. I would be happy. I wish Darzalex had worked for me, but my numbers just continued to increase. It didn't slow them down. It didn't stabilize them.
And so, of course, then that's why the both of you decided to talk about CAR T. Dr. Gasparetto, how did that come up for you?
So the CAR T cell was not yet approved, was in a clinical trial, and we had phenomenal results. The responses are incredible, and some of the patients able to achieve the minimal residual disease are doing quite well after the CAR T cell, and they don't require additional therapy. Unfortunately, Donna didn't achieve the complete remission. And that's the reason why it didn't last for a long period of time. So, but the CAR T cell, is going earlier online. Hopefully, we're making modification on the construction of the CAR. There are the bispecific CAR T cells. So I think the future is gonna be in the future, the CAR T cell is going to be much more effective and hopefully more durable for a lot of patients, and go earlier on. But it's immunotherapy, going back to the immune system, teaching the immune system to control the myeloma from coming back, attacking the myeloma.
Yeah, it's a hot topic. And I know as these developments happen, it's also not just the therapy, but when you use it and modifying,
one of the bad thing about the CAR T cell that is not available for everybody, and you have to be able to catch the patient at the right time, right? And patient that can wait for the processing of the T cells, and also during the period of time to have a disease that is relatively controlled. If not, we have to do bridging, we have to restart therapy.
Yeah, it's so important, the timing of
Yeah,
it.
and timing.
And so Donna, Dr. Gasparetto comes to you and says, there's this CAR T cell therapy and also clinical trial, right? So what were your thoughts when you heard about this possibility?
I wanted to get in a CAR T trial for 2 years. I read about it a long time ago. So I was very excited about it. And I really wanted to get into it. And then COVID hit. And if it wasn't for Cristina, I wouldn't have gotten in that trial. I don't know what she did.
I know I can't say it aloud, but I think I was almost be booted out. I think sometimes I don't think I was the most favored doctor at that time, because I'm always advocating for my patients, and it was like the last patient in the clinical trial with COVID. And only because, that's it. I'm not saying no more.
Yeah, no, it's a secret. We're not going to make you reveal it.
We're not going back there.
We're not going to make you reveal it, but just keep doing it. Whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. That's incredible. I really have to say, Dr. Gasparetto, the more and more I hear, the more I'm like, man, can you also do lymphoma? No, which is mine. So Donna, I'm curious to know. So you are one of these patients. You're reading about what's available. You're more involved. What was it about CAR T, the CAR T cell therapy, that excited you so much?
I think the technology between CAR T has the potential to be how we address blood cancers in the future. So I was excited to be a part of it. It didn't work for me. but it did work for 5 months, I should say that. And I tolerated the therapy extremely well. It was so easy. I had 4 days of 104 temperature. And other than that, they just monitored me and I was waiting to get out of the hospital.
Well, great. And that's a big part of it, right? So I know the letdown was it didn't actually work, but the process of it, can you describe to people what you went through for CAR T?
In March of 2020, they took my blood, and just a warning for anybody who goes through this, make sure you use the restroom before you do this, because you're going to be hooked up to this giant machine for 4 hours and you can't drag that into the bathroom. All right. But they sorted through my blood, got the T cells out, and then put the other blood back in. Okay. Sent it off, let it duplicate, modified it. So, fight my cancer, and then let it duplicate in a Petri dish. I'm sort of exaggerating. And then right before they were going to put it back in, they did some, clean out your system chemotherapy. And then they put it back in. And I remember walking around the hospital saying, I don't think this is working because I feel fine. And this is around 4:00 in the afternoon, around 8:00. I'm like, all right, I got a temperature now, it's working. And I didn't care that I had the temperature. I was in the hospital going, yes, it's working. Because if you put something in your body that's going to attack things that aren't supposed to be there, you're going to have the symptoms you would have of having a cold or flu, right? Your body's attacking something. So that's what it was like.
I love that. You were thinking it's working, not, oh, I feel bad. It was like, let's do this, right? This is okay. Very empowering. And so were you logging, journaling? Were you doing any of that?
I was actually literally interviewed every single day. And I had to count down from 100 by 7.
I don't think I can do that.
I was a math major. I can count down from. I had a way of doing it, but it was a mental acuity test because it can affect your mental acuity. So they were just making sure I didn't have any issues.
Okay, I'm literally like, while you're talking, I'm listening, but I'm also like 193. Okay, no, so that's great. And you passed that with flying colors and you made it through the 10 days. And then after that 10 days in the hospital, were you then journaling? Were you still interviewed?
I get interviewed for my current one and that one every time I go in the hospital. Someone from the research team comes in. Now, with the current trial, I put in my daily symptoms. I wasn't putting in daily symptoms, but I was interviewed every time I went in. There's a whole research team at Duke, and a research team for every different trial. And you'll get the same research nurse to come in and interview you.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. I think some people are interested in what clinical trials are like. And I think it's really important to demystify, because it's like sometimes it reads science experiment as opposed to this is a very effective treatment and I'm just letting them know how I'm doing on this trial. So wonderful. So of course the letdown was it didn't work for you. So when that happened, I'd love to know from both of you how the conversation evolved into choosing the next treatment. So Dr. Gasparetto, for you, what was top of mind, right, after the CAR T?
Well, first of all, yes, the CAR T didn't work like we wanted for Donna, but it worked a little bit because during the time I remember she was doing okay. She really didn't have a lot of side effects, symptoms. So her myeloma, she achieved what we call a partial response. So she had some response, but not to a complete remission. And clinically, she was doing very well. So she was living the life. But unfortunately, at a certain point, we had to make a decision about restarting therapy. And, while we were talking at the very beginning that for some patients, we can watch and wait the first relapse. Unfortunately, when the myeloma comes back the second, the third time, you really cannot wait anymore because the myeloma will start, is becoming more aggressive and definitely can cause damaging very quickly. And so that is the complicated part when we choose the next therapy for a patient with myeloma. Now we have to go through all the list, right? And Donna now is not responding for sure to the pomalidomide, the daratumunab, she was exposed to the Velcade already, and the Revlimid. But one interesting thing that she had a phenomenal response to Kyprolis, to carfilzomib, and then she stopped that, but not because her myeloma was becoming resistant. So she was still sensitive to the Kyprolis. And so it was, when I was thinking about the next line of therapy, I thought that I could go back to the Kyprolis, and at that point, we had availability on the STOMP trial with the selinexor. And I love the Kyprolis-selinexor combination because so selinexor is a new drug, is a new mechanism of action, is a pill, is by mouth. Donna is taking it every week. Completely different mechanism of action. So here you have the class switch, right? And in the Kyprolis-selinexor combination, when we looked at the overall response, we also dissected, we looked patients and what they received before, and was clear that it was very effective even in patients who had failed the Darzalex, the anti-CD38 antibody. And those are the patients that they're more difficult to treat. Their myeloma is definitely more aggressive. And it happened for Donna too. She didn't respond to the Darzalex, and now she had a phenomenal response with this combination. So we circled back to the Kyprolis because she was still sensitive, and we add a different mechanism of action, a new drug, and we have learned how to use selinexor over the last several years. Selinexor was first approved as in combination with dexamethasone, single agent, given twice a week, and was quite difficult for patients, a lot of side effects, nausea, fatigue, a lot of GI, weight loss. And we have learned that is not the case when selinexor is given once a week in different combination. And also, Donna has been on this combination now for a year, right, Donna? Yeah, and she was able to achieve I think you're mute again, Donna. She was able to achieve the complete remission, which is insane because let's count, she got the total therapy, one, but two transplant with a big deal chemotherapy. And so that was count as one line of therapy, but oh my gosh, she got the VDPAs and the consolidations, so, and then some maintenance. Then she got carfilzomib, lenalidomide too. Then she got the darapom, then a CAR-T cell. So this is fifth line for her, and achieving a complete remission in fifth line, it's very difficult. And so very successful story with this combination. That's the reason why I like it. Yeah, the carfilzomib is given once a week in the vein. She has 1 week break, but she knows that, and my team is following her very closely. I think Melissa is your APP, right?
Melissa's amazing.
Yeah. Melissa Martin is one of the APP, the front line, and she's monitored Donna very closely. We check labs every time she comes, she gets her infusion. And yes, that day and probably even the day after, like she was mentioned, the side effects that you can have, the nausea, the dexamethasone is still part of the equation in the selinexor. But then after she is able to travel in November, we went to a trip together, but I didn't see her. I was looking for her everywhere. We went to a biking trip, right? You were there before me. And
yes.
Yeah, I was on call, so I couldn't come earlier. I just did the weekend. And I think you rode on Thursday.
I rode on one of my worst chemo days. I rode 30 miles on that bike on my worst chemo day.
That's incredible just to hear all that. Thank you, Dr. Gasparetto, for describing, this. I know it's part of the STOMP trial and we've talked about it before. And Donna, for you, can you describe your mindset? Well, first, when you heard about, there's selinexor, it's novel, so it's a different class. We're going to give this a shot. This is another clinical trial. What were your thoughts on that? And then if you could describe how it's been.
Okay, well, whenever I get a new drug, I investigate it and then figure out how it works so that I could explain it to a 2-year-old. Once I'm convinced I understand how it works, if I think it's pretty cool, then I'm behind it. And I was behind it. Then I promptly forget how it works. But I always think that the next one is going to be the one that works for me, the one that makes a difference. But my life is a Rolling Stone song. I can't always get what I want, but I get what I need, which is why I've been through 5 therapies and I'm MRD 0. But it was challenging at first. And the longer I'm on it, the more of an issue I have the day after chemo. And so that's gotten hard. But every time I'm given a new challenge, like I didn't used to actually throw up, but for the last 2 months on the 3rd treatment of the month, which is when the toxicity is at its maximum, I wake up in the middle of the night and drive the porcelain bus. So I've gotten really good. I have little barf bags all over my house and I just deal with it. I'm actually really good with those bags now. And I know that I have mild nausea for the next 2 days. I won't be sick to my stomach. And then I get the time off and I'm fine. And like I said, I literally forget that I have cancer, I'm doing a push-up challenge.
It's true, you're doing a push-up challenge.
and I did 45 consecutive push-ups 2 days ago, trying to get to 50. So then I'll have to switch to a pull-up challenge.
You've left me in a really hard place because now I have like zero excuse, like not to be better. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if I could do 5 push-ups. But anyway, enough about me. So I know Dr. Gasparetto did talk about the regimen, and I know we're wrapping up. But Donna, so if you could describe from the patient perspective what you're having to do on this selinexor kyprolis dexamethasone. So how often are you going in, taking the medicine? Yeah.
I go in once a week for 3 weeks, and then I get 1 week off where I only take dexamethasone. there's a tremendous staff that works with Cristina, and they're the people I see every month for my annual, for my monthly visit. I see Cristina if there's a change of therapy or if I have questions, but otherwise I work with Melissa. The staff is wonderful. I have really as fun a time as you could have in oncology, but I'm always there for 4, 5, 6 hours, depending on how long it takes for test results to get back. I then have, I'll repeat this for three weeks in a row. My symptoms get a little bit worse with each of the 3 symptoms. So it's the worst, the 3rd cycle. It's basically, I feel fine the day of, nausea the 2nd, and the worst nausea the 3rd day. Okay. And recently I've been getting sick to my stomach just once a month in the middle of the night. So it's gotten worse, but I deal with it because what I do is I try and make those other days even more special, do things that are really fun. I'll literally look at the paper and say, oh, I can go look at all the artwork in downtown Raleigh, or, I just fill those days with things so I know that I'm living.
I love that. I love that you make the most of all of that time that you have, especially with no side effects. So thank you for sharing that. So Donna, you had mentioned all of these side effects and, how you're largely free of them for this time that you live almost like you're cancer free, right? But there is a way that you've learned also to deal with some of these things. I'd love for you to talk about that.
Well, whenever I've had a new cancer treatment, I always do something that I call the tummy tango, where you're trying to dance between different kinds of GI problems, being constipated, having diarrhea, being sick to your stomach. And so you're taking all these drugs, Imodium AD and Dulcolax, and you're trying to figure out which one do you need this morning, and should you take one proactively. So I called it the tummy tango, but now that I'm in the selinexor trial, I call it the selinexor salsa.
Can you just describe how important it is for you to, I think every patient deals with these things differently. There's a different approach. For you, you've done things like, all right, it's a tummy tango, now it's selinexor salsa. Why is it important for you to be able to take that picture and come up with, these fun names?
I used to get my chemo on Thursdays, and I called Friday Fragile Friday, because the day after chemo, I have to remember to proactively take Dulcolax, to proactively take Lasix, certain things to minimize my symptoms. And I don't know, somehow the alliterations for all the days of the week came to me. On the day I got my chemo, I called it Thankful Thursday. Thankful Thursday for getting this thing that's going to make me sick in the middle of the night because it's saving my life and it's giving me time to enjoy things like watching my granddaughter compete in gymnastics this last Saturday.
I mean, that's life. And I really love that you're highlighting this, Donna. Actually, what I'm hearing from you is you're coming up with these names because they're alliterative, so they're easy to remember. And it's almost like expectation setting, right? Now I remember, because there's so many things that you're going through as a patient and so many different days and pills and medications that you're having to remember. And so this has helped you set those expectations so you can remember, right? Because the worst thing sometimes is forgetting and getting hit all over again with, oh, I forgot about this.
That's actually a perspective I hadn't even thought about, but it's so true. It kind of boxes in the chemo symptom days. And I realized, well, Thursday's thankful. I have a good day in oncology. I know that sounds crazy, but it's great nursing staff. I have 2 days where it's Fragile Friday, Sucky Saturday, because that's when my, it boxed it in for me. And then I realized, I'll just tell you the days. Salvation Sunday was when my chemo symptoms disappeared. Marvelous Monday, Terrific Tuesday, and Wonderful Wednesday. So it really made me hit on the fact that I had all these days that were great. So I don't know how I came up with the alliteration, but you're right. I boxed in the cancer. I boxed it in. So that's only a couple of days. or the chemo.
Yeah, for the chemo. That's what, because it's every week. So every week it's going through it again. And for you, the third week is the hardest, is what I heard you say. So now that, this is indefinite, right? You're going to stay on this. But it's hard not to, what I hear you saying is that you live in the present a lot, which is, I think, wonderful. It's something I'm trying to learn how to do more. But I imagine it's difficult not to think about the future, right? In terms of, what I've heard from a lot of, I've spoken with different, people with myeloma, and they talk about, well, I am always keeping my eye on what the next possible treatment could be. I know, Donna, you've talked about how you would read things. And so I imagine you're looking, what are you keeping your eye on? How do you approach that thought?
It's funny that you said that. I never thought about it, but I don't look that far out. I really don't. If my numbers start going up, I'll start looking because let's think about it. If this lasts for another year, there's going to be a whole bunch more treatments out there. And looking at it now is almost a moot point because I don't know that the treatment that's going to work for me has already been developed. I occasionally get into this slump of, oh crap, excuse my language. I've got chemo. And now I get it on Wednesday. I've got chemo on Wednesday and I've got to be careful and make sure my barf bags are all around the house, but I don't look off to the future too far. I look off at, am I fully living my life? Am I improving in some way? Am I growing and not just letting the cancer take over my being? So I do kind of stay, maybe not in exactly the moment, but at least in the week. Yeah.
I think that's really helpful for people to hear too. But I also appreciate, Donna, that you mentioned, and of course, you can say, oh crap, you can say whatever you want, right? Because this is life. I know, I appreciate that you're acknowledging that there are still times where it's like, oh, this is coming up and I don't like that this is happening and that there are negative, emotions coming up, because that's the human experience. And I think sometimes I wonder with people how they balance that, right? Because I do think it's important personally for me to acknowledge if I'm not feeling well, and let myself process that before I can move on. I don't know how you feel about it.
Well, I am in love with philosopher Thich Nhat Hanh, and I discovered him over 20 years ago. And I have learned to be thankful for having a non-toothache. You know what I'm saying? So Monday, Tuesday, and, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, I have a non-toothache. I have no nausea. I can eat what I want, When I do feel the nausea, there's several things you can do. Now I will get depressed. I will exercise, because I found that exercise, even though it's hard because I'm weak from not eating, can make the symptoms less. But I can also think about the fact through the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh, which I just think are marvelous, that welcome back, nausea. I know you're temporary. I know you're working for me. So meditation, exercise, doing things to distract myself from the toxicities. You're not thinking about nausea all the time if you're wandering through a Christmas forest, which I did at the Roanoke Hotel a week or so ago. So just, there's lots of things I can do, and I have to work at it all the time. It's not, I have to work at it, but it's worth it.
It's inspirational for me personally. You had mentioned a term, it sounded like non-toothache. What?
Well, people don't think about, people notice when they have an issue, but they don't notice when they don't have an issue. And that's what you want to pay attention to. Sometimes I will just realize, and I've been doing this for years, thank heavens. I was doing this long before chemo, where I'll say, wow, I'm warm, I'm comfortable, I don't have to go to the bathroom, and I just appreciate the fact that I don't have a toothache, that I don't have nausea, that I'm not cold, and we don't appreciate those moments. As a rule, we just focus on, I have a toothache or whatever. And if we would appreciate those moments, there's actually so many more of them. And it's about being in the moment. It's about realizing that your life is good and you have all these good moments. If you count all those good moments, just like the days of the week, my little trick there, it's like, well, most of it's good, you know?
I'm just letting that sink in. I love that. I'm going to take that for my day and through my week. My last question to you is, you had sent something beautiful, and we'll share your link to Caring Bridge. And I know you do a lot of writing, and I think it's so wonderful that you put that out there. You talk about choosing how you can live each day. And then I don't know if you have it with you, but that last line that you sent in that email.
All right. So I had cataract surgery, and I'm going to need glasses for this. Yes. We may have cancer, but that doesn't have to define us. It is part of our lives, but it doesn't have to control all the minutes of our lives. So take that cancer and live fully. And I started thinking about this poster on a friend's wall that said, you are either growing or you're dying. And I've thought about that for over 30 years. I mean, it was back when I had just started my career, and I'm 68 now. It's hard to stay put. And so if I am choosing to do the push-up challenge, or to learn a new language, or to do something that says I'm growing, then I'm not dying. If I stop doing that, I can just get swallowed up in that future you talked about, that's a year or 2 years or 3 years out. And I won't let that happen. Cancer will likely take my life at some point, but it doesn't get today.
I mean, yeah, it's so beautiful. Thank you, Donna, for being so open and sharing what's going on, and sharing what's being, said to you. I think people can learn from it. Dr. Gasparetto, I know that we just came out of ASH, right? So there's this big conference, and people are getting their updates on myeloma and treatments and combinations. So, well, first, if you could talk about STOMP, where you are there with the STOMP trial with the selinexor and the Kyprolis, but then also, everyone's always looking at the next thing, like what's going to be, added to this list of possibilities. What is your message there for patients like Donna and other patients?
Still digesting some of the presentation. Clearly, in a lot of changes on how we manage myeloma, achieving the deep response, the quadruplet in the newly diagnosed setting, and then the new drugs. So a lot on the bispecific antibody that we mentioned earlier, with the different targets. So very interesting that we can maybe use them sequentially, because different targets, and so those probably, and also Donna talked about several times about the fact that the marker, we monitor patients with blood sample and with blood samples, every month, and make sure that the marker, the M spike, doesn't go up. So, and we do, unfortunately, and she mentioned about the bone marrow, the minimal residual disease. So I think that we're learning more and more about the mass spec, where we can follow patients just using blood sample, hopefully, and now had to do a lot of bone marrow. We'll see. I don't want to say things yet. I think the bone marrow with myeloma is going to remain an important test. Understanding, this testing, the depth of the responses, and the new drugs. So we're waiting for the new IMiDs to come out, the different construction of the CAR T cell, the different bites with different mechanism of different targets. So that very exciting. The STOMP trial, to answer your other question, when selinexor was approved in combination with dexamethasone was very important because it was clear the selinexor was effective, and it was approved by the FDA for patients with what we call the pentarefractory disease in combination with dexamethasone, so an oral combination. Pentarefractory, again, refractory to the IMiDs, the carfilzomib, the bortezomib, and the daratumunab. So very difficult myeloma to manage. And there was a signal with selinexor as a single agent. About 26% of patients responded, and that's the reason why the FDA allowed and approved the drug. And then it was clear, selinexor, can we try selinexor in combination with different anti-myeloma agents? So the STOMP trial was designed, so selinexor was given in different combinations, so based on the prior therapy, so with POM, with DARA, with Kyprolis, with Velcade, and the combination with Velcade was quite effective, and that led the design of the Boston trial, the phase 3 randomized trial, comparing selinexor Velcade weekly versus Velcade dexamethasone biweekly, and because the positive outcome, that combination is now approved in first relapse. So in the STOMP, we're generating data for, the big trials, and so we had multiple arms, as I mentioned, with POM, Kyprolis, DARA, ISA, with everything, and it was clear from the very beginning that we didn't need selinexor twice a week, only once a week. Is a new drug, more manageable toxicity. And then, we started to see phenomenal response, and the response in the Kyprolis selinexor is close to 80%, 70% plus, including in patients with DARA refractory disease, and that's the reason why it's becoming a very popular combination. And then we are learning how the selinexor is active even in patients with high-risk myeloma. With some of the more high-risk genetics, the 17 deletion, some of the abnormality in chromosome, translocation of chromosome 14, and the 1q amplification. So is definitely effective. Is given weekly. It comes with some of the GI toxicity, the nausea, the fatigue, but definitely mitigated by the fact that is given only once a week. And the first 2 months are the most important, is kind of the loading, and then we can make adjustment. And I think Donna is taking a little bit of a lower dose of selinexor than when we started, just to adjust based on their side effects, and it's still working. And so the STOMP, again, is what we call a trial that was designed to test the selinexor in different combination, and then there is going to be an evolution of the most powerful combinations. So I was fortunate to be part of the STOMP trial here at Duke, and I treated a lot of patients, and I'm glad that we had that combination available for Donna, because it's a very powerful combination.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Gasparetto. And just quickly, is it still recruiting? What if people are interested in it at Duke? Is it still going on?
So it's still going on, but we are reopening this combination with some dose modification, and so right now we don't have any availability on this combination, but soon. And again, we are testing with the new drugs, so we'll have hopefully other available combinations soon.
Thank you both for taking the time today to share both of your perspectives. I think it's incredibly important for people to learn from. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, Donna, is there any last thing you want to say to the people who are watching and reading your story and what you've shared with us?
Well, everybody has their own journey. Every cancer is different. Every chemo is different. Every person's different. I want the people who see this to realize that they can choose to live as fully as possible. They might have physical constraints because multiple myeloma can do that to you, but there are other ways you can grow, things you love to do, and just keep working on it one step at a time. Keep challenging yourself.
Donna, thank you so much. I so appreciate you spending all this time sharing your story. And I look forward to hearing more, and we'll definitely post the link to your Caring Bridge and anything else you want to share.
All right. Thank you so much.
For everyone who wants a conversation, please go to thepatientstory.com where you'll find human answers to your cancer questions.